Hey everyone, welcome to Motor Psychology. My name's Jonathan. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it. So in today's video, I don't know if you remember in a few other videos I was taking, in order to access the upper right control arm, I had to remove the fan shroud, the radiator fan, the radiator, and things like that. So since the radiator fan was out, I decided to refresh it, paint it, make sure that the fan clutch is working well, and then it's going to be reinstalled in a couple of weeks when I put everything back together. So that's what you're going to see on this video, how I cleaned, repainted, and got this fan looking as close to new as possible. So stick around for that video, enjoy the video, and let's get into it. This is just me pulling the fan out of the Corvette when I was removing the upper control arm. So the fan had to come out, the fan shroud, the radiator, and some other parts. So that's what the fan looks like as it's coming off the Corvette after 44 years. Okay, here's the fan from the Corvette and the fan clutch as well. I'll be taking those apart and cleaning this or replacing it, and also repainting this. So I don't think it's going to be a really huge job, but since it's off, I'm going to clean that. So that's the bimetallic strip on the clutch that makes the clutch engage when the temperature gets to a certain level. So this is affected by heat. Right now it is covered with oil and grease, so probably wouldn't work so well. I'll take it off and see if it's refurbishable or if I need to get a new one. But before I do that, I'm going to remove it from the fan here by undoing these bolts here, and then give it a clean and definitely paint this and refresh that. So at the end of the day, have a new looking fan to go back in the Corvette. So to get it apart, it's just a matter of taking off 4 of these bolts here, and those are 1/2 inch bolts. So I'm going to do that now. Hopefully I don't need any penetrating oil, but we'll see. I'm going to use an extension as well, just to make it a bit easier. Yeah, those bolts are on really strong, so I'm going to put some penetrating oil on it and then let it sit for a little bit. I have to say, this product is pretty good, very reliable and professional grade. That's what it looks like in English, and that's what it looks like in French, which is kind of different. Oh well, let's try it out. And we'll just let that sit for a little bit, see how it goes. Hey everyone, so we'll just let this thing sit with the penetrating oil, and then I'll get around to taking those bolts off and then getting this thing cleaned up. Okay, so the lube has had time to soak in, so I'm now going to give it a shot with this wrench, see if I can get it out. If not, I have a breaker bar, and I'll give that a try as well. Hopefully this will loosen it. Let's give it a try. Still on super tight, so that's interesting to know how tight that is. Let's try the other setup. So I've got a breaker bar on it, and I'm going to see if that'll loosen it now. Yep, too easy. Now it's done. Move on to this one. Alright, so that's 2 done. Scoot it over to this one, because I don't want to try. Get that one loosened. Check this one. I have them all now. Yep. Now we'll take the rest out with this. So breaker bar is certainly pretty useful things to have. Once they're cracked, it's pretty easy to get them out. What those bolts look like. Pretty dry in the middle, so I can lube that a bit when I put it back in. One more to go. There we have it, the 4 bolts out of the fan clutch, and I'm going to see if I can remove the blade from the clutch right now. Alright, let's remove this. Hopefully it'll come off okay. Still on there really tight. Gonna use this rubber, it's big but it's fairly lightweight mallet, see if I can tap the clutch off, so I'll give that a try. Seemed to work pretty well. Pop the fan out. There's the fan blade, which I'm going to clean up a little bit. Put that aside. Here's the fan clutch. So I'm going to try and clean this up. I think it'll clean up pretty well. I could probably even take that off, but I'm not going to bother. And then lightly clean up the bottom. The actual clutch mechanism seems to work pretty fine. It's nice. So if I don't have to replace it and I can clean it up, that's great. And let's do that. Before I do that, I'd like to put my parts in a bag, label them so that I don't lose them and I can get them at a later time when I need them. So I'm going to do that with the bolts over there. There, something like that will be perfect. Take these guys, fire them in the bag. Lock it up and then store it somewhere. All right, let's try and clean the clutch. We'll use some more of that orange degreaser. Let that sit a while. Can already see this spring appearing a lot better, and that's just after about 30 seconds of cleaning. Do the flip side. So it's not looking too bad for the first go. I'll probably give it another shot and another cleaning. So let's do that. Here's the fan clutch. It's looking a lot cleaner. I'll probably go over it one more time. Might even use the pressure washer on it to get it some grease out of areas that I can't get out with a brush. And this side turned out pretty good as well. You can actually see the color of the O-ring in there. Seems to be fine. We'll give it another check before we actually reinstall it. And let's move over to cleaning the fan. So the fan itself isn't too dirty, so I'm going to just put that in the sink, clean it up, and then prepare it for painting. Alright, we've got that scrubbed down for now. We will dry it off and see how it looks. Quickly dry this off. Check it out. I'm just going to do a quick wire brush on it, and then it'll be good to prime and paint. Next, what I'm going to do is just quickly clean those before I store them permanently. Okay, I got those bolts cleaned up, and I'm just going to dry them off and put them aside. Let them air dry for a little bit. I'm going to get a wire brush and see if I can do it inside with my drill opposed to using the air tools, and I'm not looking at removing all the paint, but I'm just looking at smoothing some of it out so that when I repaint it, it'll look okay. So that's what I'm going to do now, and moving on to that. Okay, I'm ready to do the wire brush on it. I'm just going to do it lightly. I don't want to really affect any of the balance here, so just a light clean on some of these areas here that could probably be smoothed out a little bit. What I'm going to use is my angle grinder with this medium grade wire brush on it. So let's give that a try. That's not that bad on the main part. Looking pretty good. I'm going to use a smaller wire brush in these areas and attach that to my drill, and hopefully that will work. So I'm going to do the switch up and get that done. Also, you can notice now that it says things like front. Alright, so I have a small wire brush hooked up to my drill. Hopefully we'll be able to get into these areas and just give them a quick clean before we get into priming and painting. So let's give that a try. So I'm just looking at roughing it up and getting some of the rust or corrosion off, and then it'll be good to paint. Alright, that does it for the fan prep. I'm going to wipe it down with some acetone or methyl hydrate. I forget which one I'm going to use. And when that's done, I'm going to go outside and prime it. So let's start that process. Before I paint this, I'm going to wipe it down with some acetone, let that dry, and then I'm going to put the primer on it. So that's what I'm using here. The good thing about it is it dissolves and cleans and evaporates super quickly. Flip it around. This side is not as naturally dirty. Okay, it's been all wiped down now, ready to start the priming process. And I think I'll start on, maybe the front side, get that one going. I'm just using regular primer, so let's give it a shot. We'll let that dry and then we'll flip it over and come back and do the other side. Flip it around, paint the other side. Okay, we'll let that dry and come back and check it out. Okay, now on to put the first coat of black paint on, and I'm using semi-gloss professional high performance black paint. I'm sure most of you know this anyway. Great idea when using a spray can to do short blasts of paint, keeping the paint layer relatively thin to avoid dripping, and better to do a few light coats than one heavy coat that is saturated with paint. So that is the general technique that I use. Short blasts of paint and almost kind of dust it on there for the first coat, let that dry, and then repeat with the second coat. So I basically use the same process when I'm using a spray can for all the parts that I'm redoing. I usually use a similar technique with compressed air as well, just a wider sweeping, and I usually don't use it for parts like this, but basically with any spray application of paint, you want to put on light dustings per coat and not oversaturate. Give it time to dry and then repeat until you're happy with the layers of paint that you have on there. Wait until that dries and you flip it over. Going to flip this around and paint the other side. First coat. Once that's done, I'm going to lightly sand it, flip it around, and give it its final coat of black paint. Okay, we'll let that dry and we'll come back and do the final coat on it. Just going to do some very light sanding on this. Wipe down some of the dust with a tack cloth. I'm going to put on the final coat now. We'll let that dry and we'll come back and flip it over and then do the next coat. I'm going to paint up the tops of these bolts and get those things done. First I need to take them. I'm just painting the top there. There we go. Wait for those to dry. Now to finish up the paint on this fan. So I decided that I'm going to spray this again and then pressure wash it to get anything out of it that I don't want on it, and then it should be clean enough to put back on the fan. So let's get into that. Right now I'm just going to spray it down with some more orange degreaser, let that sit for a minute, and then pressure wash it. It is pretty clean, but hopefully this will get the remaining stuff done. I'm going to let that sit for a couple minutes. Well, you can already see that it's taking a bit of stuff off. So let that sit and then pressure wash it. And I'll do the same to the other side as well. Here we are with the final blasting that. It looks pretty good, and I think about as good as I'm going to get that going. My main concern is to make sure that this spring is good to go. If not, the clutch is not going to work. And the backside looks totally different and nice. So this will be going back on the fan, and that'll be done for now. So not a bad little cleanup and restoration. So here we are ready to go. I'm going to be putting the clutch back on the fan. Made sure I had the fan the right way around. So this is actually the bottom of the fan, and we'll put that on. So let's do that. So the best way to do it is just to line that up, put this through, and it has to match up at the bottom here. Nice and firm and spot there. And then it's just a matter of putting the bolts in there. So I'm going to do that right now. Remember, I had painted the tops of those, so I'm just going to get these prepared and ready to go in. Take that one off. Easier said than done. And take this one off. Good to go. And same with that one as well. So I'm going to put those in just by hand. And since the thread is a little bit dry, I'm going to stick just a tiny bit of oil on there just to help it. So these guys are 1/2 inch. Put them in here and just start threading them in. It's going in no problem. One last one. Going to hand tighten them and then tighten them with the ratchet in a sec. I'm going to use that extension so I can get around here as much as possible. Tighten that up. So there we have it. Finally got the fan done, back onto the fan clutch, and now I'm going to put it away in my parts container so that in a few weeks when it's time to put this back on, the new water pump, it'll be ready to go. So not too bad for a short, easy refurb. Looks really good and is definitely going to look great when it's back on the car. So I thought I was finished with this, but then I thought about it, and I want to put some blue Loctite in those bolts because it's going to be strong enough to ensure that those bolts don't get loose and don't fly off when this fan is in place. But at the same time, it's not strong enough that I won't be able to get these bolts out like I did at the beginning of the video. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to put in the blue Loctite and then tighten these bolts up. So yeah, these look pretty good. They're not nearly as dry as what they used to be, so I'll be able to stick those in a sec. So this is the blue Loctite that I'm going to be using. It's kind of like cream consistency, and it's not a permanent thing, so it'll keep things in place, but it's something that you can always get the bolt out when needed. So I'm going to put that on the bolts and put them in. It's almost like a glue stick type of application. You just turn it and the stuff comes out. Turn the bottom and the stuff comes out at the top. There we go. Certainly feel a little bit better that that has the Loctite on it. I know that thing is going to be spinning around. You don't want it to get loose while you're driving. So that's the reason for the Loctite. And that's it. Hey everyone, that concludes the video on the fan and the fan clutch for the C3 Corvette. Hopefully you found it interesting. So all I did was really do a quick cleaning, taking some of the paint off, and then rebuilding that fan, and also making sure that that fan clutch was properly cleaned and reinstalled. So everything looks good to go. It looks pretty new, and I'm excited to get that reinstalled back into the Corvette. So that'll be upcoming pretty soon in the next few weeks. So I'm also going to be doing a core support video and then also a radiator installation video, along with the water pump and the power steering pump and a whole bunch of other things that's associated with the steering, suspension, and cooling system of this Corvette. So stick around. I hope to get those things out as soon as possible. Thanks so much for your support. Really appreciate it. Hit a like or a subscribe if you want. Greatly appreciated, and we'll see you all in the next video, which is coming soon.